Yeah, we have to switch our signs around. Hand me through it.
Well, I had practice.
It is 6 o'clock and I have started the recording.
Okay, let us begin. First, we'll do the call to order. Okay, approval of the minutes. So from the last meeting, anybody have any issues with the meeting minutes from last meeting?
Moved.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next up is public forum. Sorry.
Well, of everyone, please.
Oh, that's right.
No worries.
We all have to vote.
Okay.
I don't know. Yes, everybody say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we are good for the public or the minutes last time. All right, public forum. Who would like to start?
Actually, can I ask a question?
Please do.
Isn't roll call normally on the agenda? I mean, because we usually go around and say our names, correct? So the public knows who's here,
Oh,
but it's not on the agenda.
I think we've done. Have we done that? We haven't done that before. have we?
I take roll and it's put on the minutes.
Okay, but
We
where
haven't
is it?
been doing it out.
But I think she said, I think what Rita's saying
I
is.
see what you're saying. You haven't been doing it out loud. You've just been doing.
Yes,
Right.
Okay.
But what Rita's saying, since we have people
yeah,
here,
absolutely.
so
Sure.
I'll start. I'm it's Chair Watson. I know. Have to read it. See, this is even doubly good. So you guys see who I am, and then I can read who I am. I'm Rob Watson, Vice Chair.
I'm Michael Chisholm, I'm a member. Rick Emmelheinz, member.
Excuse me, Rita Russell, councilman.
It's,
Mike Vincent, member.
Sonia Strong, member.
Dave Lewis, Codes Division Manager.
AJ Boudreaux, staff liaison and lead code enforcement officer.
so. We do public forum. Public forum. That's the third time I tried. Okay, who would like to start for public forum?
She signed up
Okay,
first.
so if you'd like to address us, you can do it from back there or wherever you'd like.
What do people usually do? I've never been to one.
If you'd like to come up and have a seat in front.
Yeah, come on, sit up here. We can all probably hear better.
For public comment, you do get 3 minutes. I will give you a 1 minute warning.
Joanne Hill, I live at 2736 South Grant, and what brought me here today is when I talked to Dave this morning about the weeds in the alley, and he told me that there is a plan that may go through. The problem is, I think people that don't have alley load garages and people that, probably depressed economically, they may not have the means to have it done or whatever the circumstances, but it's getting out of control. And it's a fire hazard. People don't pick up their, like their wood, their clippings are left in the in the alley. And it's just, it could be a matter of time. This was a good summer. We had a lot of rain, but I think that it's a safety concern, number one, and it's an aesthetic concern. I know I will drive my car down the alley and bushes hit my car. They've been clipped recently, but for the longest time, it was really a nuisance. And so what I think would be a good thing is for people to be warned. And then if they're non-compliant, then perhaps fine them, but also give them enough opportunity to rectify the situation. And then people that are indigent or elderly or whatever, if on the warning, it could state somewhere where they could get help from the community so they don't feel so devastated, like, oh my God, I'm going to get fined. I think that could be helpful. I know there's resources out there for people to help that are indigent or elderly or have whatever sort of illness. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So based on what she said, so we're not doing any changes to the policy today. But, and we might discuss that later, but from what she's saying with the issues, is there something that indigent or elderly people or resources that they can go to get help if they need to, paying fines, assuming they get to that point?
That's a great question. So we can refer certain people over to the Malley Center where they have some resources, especially for those that are senior related. We are also looking at partnering with other organizations that may be able to assist those that are indigent. We haven't been alerted to too many homes where someone has claimed that they're either having a medical issue or they're elderly, or everybody that's called in that has concerns about that, without going into specifics of case, usually have someone that they rely on for caregiving. But for those people that don't, we try to work with them to find a solution to those. We don't have one set identified program. And I think this is a good opportunity for maybe this group to look into that.
I agree. I think that's good.
We do. So, and I guess I want to just understand how this works into the notification, and that 95, we get 95% compliance through notifications. And so why do we get these extra complaints? I mean, I got one in an email a few weeks ago. So,
So I guess I'm confused as to,
okay, so if someone calls you and reports a specific area where there are weeds, don't you normally tell them that it's on the rotation cycle? I'm just asking this because I understand, that's what I'm getting.
so this perfect question to go into this, and I should have written down the specific numbers. I didn't bring those with me this afternoon. I was reviewing a lot of our weed statistics over the last couple of weeks. So if someone was to call and say, hey, there's weeds in this location, we were letting people at the beginning of the season know that we're equitably enforcing our grass and weed ordinances, and that we're going street by street, alley by alley, neighborhood by neighborhood. And we have the city divided into a grid system. And so that way, every single residential property had an inspection done at some time during the season. I'm happy to report that based off of our review today, there's 2 weeks left before the entire city has been inspected at a minimum of one time for grass, weeds, and overgrowth. And so those seasonal inspectors will be going back through, starting where they started back at the end of May, and doing re-inspections and then taking the more serious steps to do enforcement for those properties. We have issued over 4,400 grass weeds notices this season to date, which is double what we issued for the total of last year. So
Can you address why that number's not up?
So we have directed most of the code enforcement officers to spend most of their time doing extra on top of what the seasonal patrols are doing. We did have 2 seasonal code enforcement officers. We did have one leave us about 6 weeks ago. So some of the enforcement is based off of having extra staff, but also if you look at the weather conditions that we've had this year, they've been very extreme. And so at the beginning of the season, where we typically don't have a wet season, we had prolonged rain over weeks and weeks. And so it really caused the spring to really get sprung and just grow out of control. And so at one point it was so prevalent in the city, we had a difficult time keeping up. And so that increased our level of enforcement.
Is it safe then to say that people who got inspected within the first 3-4 weeks more likely to get that versus the people maybe toward the end who've had time to address this? And in fact, is that equitable?
So we've split it into 2 different areas where they started. We also had code enforcement officers that were working within another parameter. So we're 7 square miles. So to be equitable, starting on 2 sides of the city and converging towards the middle was the best way on the grid schedule that we found was successful last year and duplicated this year.
Well, this year and last year were 2 totally different years is where I'm coming from. And that I have fear then that by doing that, you've basically penalized many more people early on in the season, perhaps those people who had time to actually do the cutting that they needed to do and couldn't get to it toward the middle of the season. Is that a safe assessment?
I think that's a fair assessment. We can't be at every place at every property at every time, but we do address those most egregious first. So yes, from the extra code enforcement side. So we have the seasonal officers plus the supplement of the code enforcement officers that do find the more egregious properties that we move forward more expedited.
Are there any other questions with that?
We going forward with public forum.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were all done finishing that subject. Are you ready to go?
We don't have a microphone because I couldn't hear what was going on. I'll just speak very loudly. C.N. Dickerson Bates Logan. The enabling legislation and the bylaws for this committee give you responsibility over reviewing codes, especially Title 15, and making revisions, deletions, and additions, and to review the processes employed by code enforcement and make recommendations for changes. You need to particularly acquaint yourself with Title 15 and the code enforcement website, which mirrors the process defined in code and has been confirmed many times since 2018 to be, in essence, a 7-day informal notice, a 14-day posted notice of violation before any summons and complaint can be issued. There is no provision for using the 14-day notice as educational or seasonal. Doing so makes it indistinguishable from the second step before code enforcement can issue summons and complaints. And 3 such notices subjects the property owner to 15-4-1C, prima facie evidence of willful and deliberate violation of code, and authorizes the court to impose the $2,650 penalty in addition to any other fees. You should address this possibility and revise this and/or code enforcement process. Your bylaws set forth your authority and the limited authorities of the recording secretary, which according to the charter, Article Roman numeral 8, boards and commissions, the recording secretary shall be provided by the city manager, and whose duties in the bylaws are limited to facilitating the administrative work of the committee and preparing the agenda at the direction of the chair and posting only with the approval of the presiding officer. The staff liaison is limited to providing technical information. Not being voting members, neither the staff liaison nor the recording secretary has any parliamentary participation, nor can either define or add to the agenda or conduct committee business or schedule joint meetings or interject or interrupt except when addressed. One further note, public comment is only for the public to express their concerns as to the activities of the subject of your committee. Public comment is not for voting members under any circumstances except to ask questions. You are a citizens committee responsible only to city council through your council liaison. And I have a bunch of documentation to support that, including the code about prima facie evidence.
I'm sorry, are you done? Any questions regarding that from anybody?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
No, she can't. No, she.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Public, the questions are only open to the members to ask
Okay,
if they want.
sorry.
So we're allowed to ask for clarifying information to what was said, but the public
Okay.
is not allowed to ask another public
My
person.
first day on the job.
You're excused.
But member Michael is
Thank you.
allowed to.
You're doing great, Rob.
Yeah.
I have to share my naivete, my ignorance. I'm gonna do it anyway. If we were gonna boil down what you just said, I don't know what you're saying. I mean, what is wrong? Or what is the decision? Or what is the action that you would like us to take? And I'm not being a wise guy. I don't understand. I hear your dissatisfaction, but what is your expectation of us?
Well, I would urge you to understand the code
Okay.
that you're dealing with. I would urge you to review the process of code enforcement, because them using a 14-day posting notice as a seasonal or educational complaint, or, it doesn't mean anything, is wrong, because it's indistinguishable from the actual 14-day posting notice that is in the code and is confirmed by code enforcement's website, that is the second step in the process before you issue a summons and complaint. It's indistinguishable from the process leading up to a summons and complaint.
Okay.
And by doing that and calling it a wholesale, educational, or seasonal, it's still recorded as a 14-day notice, which would subject the property owner to, this code section in Title 15. 15-4-1, judicial abatement of nuisances. And that's another issue. By making weeds and grass a nuisance, when it's just a seasonal issue, we actually moved snow and ice from nuisance into the violation bureau because it was a seasonal issue. And it was recommended at the time, we do the same thing with weeds and grass, but it didn't happen.
Can I ask a question?
Well, let me finish the judicial notice thing. In C, under judicial abatement of nuisances, it says prima facie evidence. The issuance of 3 or more of these notices of violation of the title shall be prima facie evidence that the responsible party deliberately and willfully violated the title and may be punished within the discretion of the court as provided in 1-4-1. This remedy shall be cumulative with all other remedies. Currently, 1-4-1 entitles the court to impose a $2,650 fine, a general penalty, which is the case for nuisances. Weeds and grass should not be nuisances, and they shouldn't be using a formal posting notice and pretend that it's not going to be one of these three.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And time's at a premium here. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're not convinced, or you don't believe that code enforcement is following the rule book according to the rules. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay, so, and then my next question is, how many instances or how many examples are there out there where the citizens of Englewood are up in arms and that they're screaming, this is unfair and I'm being fined? I mean, I'm not aware of any. So are you?
Yes.
Are there lots of those instances?
Yes. Yes.
Like, well, how many? Just a ballpark.
Oh, I'd say about 3,300.
Yes.
Just this year.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm one of them.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, of which one is there 3,300 examples of?
them issuing 14-day notice of violation.
And many of those people have received a $2,600 fine.
Yeah, that's.
No, that's not my point. My point is that by issuing those notices, they could be used as one of the 3.
I understand that, but how many have been used as one of the 3? How many people have been fined $2,600? Do you know?
0.
So far, but we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, but and maybe we do need to rearrange some wording on that. But even in these meetings, it has been noted that second notice is educational.
but it's not educational. It can't be. There's no provision in the code for using a formal posting 14-day notice as a seasonal
No,
thing. And they can enforce it. They can enforce it if they want to.
but they haven't, right?
I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
they
he
said-
just said they were going to enforce these notices. We don't know the difference. When we get one, we don't know that it's not formal notice. It doesn't say anywhere on it, it's a seasonal notice or it's educational. And a lot of these notices have been going to people that don't have any violation on their properties. Probably
Question,
about 3,000 of them.
question, Rob. May I address Director Lewis for a technical question? How many of these are being turned over to city enforcement to be used as strike number 1 against the code as written?
I can't specifically answer that right now. I wasn't prepared with that specific statistic. However, I know this is a very passionate topic. People have come in, citizens have come and talked to them. They've talked to city council as well as the city manager. I think that once this weed season is done, maybe it might be a good opportunity for us to review a change in the ordinance to make it what you feel would best fit the city. I think there's opportunity in changes. There's always an opportunity, but I think right now, my recommendation, professional recommendation, would be that we stay the course that we've set, that we've done for the last 2 seasons, and then we come together maybe in a future session and really hash out and discuss what this body would like to potentially see and what city council may wish.
And so my secondary technical question would be, for this round 2 that's getting ready to begin, what would be the issuance that would be given to somebody who is found not in compliance for now the second time?
Currently, with some of those properties, they are receiving an additional courtesy notice that is 24 hours to come into compliance. And if they don't, we take it to the next. So these are the properties that are really egregious, like they have not cut once this season and their weeds are too.
And does that 24-hour notice fit within the code as written?
It is an extra step that we're taking that is a courtesy that is not required by code.
Okay, so then, all right, I'll bring it up after.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll respond when I'm allowed to respond at the end of the meeting
Oh,
about future.
oh, gotcha.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So then what happens after the 24-hour notice and they don't do it?
If properties are egregious, which there's been several that council have also put forward, we will move forward with the administrative abatement process.
Okay, so that's why it's in the nuisance abatement now.
Correct.
And so we could later talk about whether we want to keep weeds there.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Kim Wright. I live in Tubbs. I was not planning on speaking tonight, but after listening to C.A. Dickerson, I need to add a couple. I spoke before in May. And a couple of things that I did address was targeted areas that code enforcer says we don't do that. There were several of us that spoke that night. I want to say 5. Every single one of us lives in different parts of the city. Every single one of our neighborhoods within a week got hit. Our neighbors were talking to us. All of us, I believe except for one, did receive a warning, and our entire neighborhood were lambasted with these warnings. A lot of them were unwarranted. We had to look and find the problem. I had a neighbor down the street from me call and say, I'm growing sunflowers. What are you talking about? And they're just sprouting. They're not weeds. My next door neighbor, we had to look for the weed because there was none and their grass wasn't. And this was in May when we were having a lot of rain. On our property, my husband has a blazer. The person that wrote the warning literally walked behind it and look for the grass that was above 6 inches. So I understand where people are upset that a warning can go towards the 3 that can end up to a big fine.
1 minute.
Because sometimes the warning is unwarranted. And will that stay in their file? So a weed isn't necessarily a weed, it's a sunflower. And will they be pulled or will it stick in their file? And I think that's something that needs to look at on top of being targeted. Well, back in my neighborhood after speaking today. And that's something we need to think about also, because I think the reporting system needs to be looked at a little bit better also. So I think there needs to be some clarification with that. And pictures. Are they taking pictures of properties that they are writing warnings or tickets for? To document also. So if there are, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the members?
I just have a follow-up, like Mike, at the end of the meeting, there's some points brought up.
So I'm sorry, I had a question.
Oh, sure.
You had said there were 5 different neighborhoods that were targeted?
Well, yeah, there were 5 of us that spoke. All of us live in different parts of the city. I joke where I live, I consider it the part of Englewood where you left your kid in the hot car walked away, because I'm west of Federal. And people are like, that is Englewood, because it's Sheridan, it's Englewood, it's Littleton, it's Denver, or a mishmash. People don't realize it's Englewood. I live in that part. Someone else, District 1, CEAC District 1, they got hit. There's someone else that spoke who is District 4. So all those folks lived in different parts. So there are 4 inspectors, 6 inspectors. So I don't know all the areas, but it's just coincidence. I don't know. But all of a sudden, within a week or 2 weeks, everyone kind of got warnings in their areas, but nobody lived near each other. So it's very
I'm just
coincidental.
wondering how is the term targeted on that? If they're in different areas, different.
Well, and that's why everyone was suspect. Everyone spoke out about the ordinance that everyone's been working on, because we came in May and spoke about how we believe some changes need to be done. And within a week, 2 weeks at the most, everyone ended up with warnings. And it's one of the things that I spoke about when I gave my comment on selective targeting, that with this ordinance, because multiple parts of our titles, and like I said, I wasn't prepared to speak. There were several parts of several chapters of our charter could be impacted by this ordinance change. And I'd asked if it'd been read and that type of thing. And I was afraid of selective targeting, and it was just very odd that many of us received warnings, and I was concerned about selective targeting, and oddly enough, warnings afterwards. So it was just a concern. So.
Are there questions from other members?
Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a question. She mentioned somebody walked behind a car. You get out, walk behind or on property?
So typically when we do enforcements, we do enforcement from the public right away. So we would look from the street or the alley into somebody's property. We don't look over 6-foot fences. We don't climb on top of our trucks. We don't climb on ladders. All of our inspections are done from the public right.
Usually from the car, right?
No, well, the seasonal officers get out of their vehicles and actually walk the block.
Okay. Oh, actually, nice.
I have a question also. I'm just posing because I don't have this information. The seasonal officer is it a certified police officer? I mean, are they considered to be having all of the rights and abilities of a regular officer?
They are not a sworn code official, so they can't issue summonses and complaints or anything into court. Just like any citizen, they can file a complaint, they can post their property. They are trained on the identification of growth, what potentially could be intentionally landscape material, and they do issue those notices. On that notice, there is a phone number to call, and our seasonal officers make notes as to whether the violation is in the front of the house or the alley. And they're happy to provide additional direction as well as code officers as to what violation may have occurred and what needed to be corrected. So a citizen can always reach us to ask for further clarification, which is available.
If that person were to get out of their car and walk around another car on a person's property, is it conceivable that they are trespassing?
No, so we're getting into a lot of constitutional.
I'll clarify this because if people see people walking on their property, such as Ms. Wright mentioned, then it could be viewed as invasive.
Yeah, and I don't know her specific circumstance.
I'm just referring to what
and in this form, I can't talk about that, but specifically a code official can go, and it's been shown constitutionally that a code officer has the authority and the right to go directly to where they use the curtilage theory as well as where the mail is delivered. So if a property has a fence and it's closed and the mail is delivered to that front part of the fence, that is as far as we will go. But we will go up to a door that is where the mail is being delivered and tape a notice to a door.
Any other questions from members? Okay, I believe that closes out the public forum. Thank you all very much appreciated. We will look at. Next up on the agenda is the communications Q&A with the code fact sheet, Chris Hardy.
And I am here. I'm Chris Hargett. I'm the Director of Communications. Here, AJ invited me this evening. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have or address any concerns that you may have.
I'll go ahead and open it up initially to the members. Anybody? Any questions?
I have a question. From some of the comments that we just heard, my notes read like this. Does the city need to clarify and communicate differently? I mean, it does make a difference. If I see something that looks scary, and this, when we moved to Englewood, this happened, and we got a notice, and it said cut your weeds, and then we read it and said, oh, okay, we cut the weeds. And now when I get a notice, I cut my weeds. It's not a big deal, but there is that initial impact, and a word can be a very powerful thing. And so some of the comments that I'm wondering is, could there be an improvement here simply by the words or the color of the paper that we put it on? And is it a communication challenge? And that's just part of it. I'm not saying that's the solution, but could you help us, or could you help code enforcement communicate more effectively? Because my daughter got a notice and she was worked up. And I said, calm down. It's not the end of the world. I'll come over and help you cut the weeds and we all lived happily ever after. But her initial reaction was, oh my God, what did I do? So these are law-abiding citizens. They want to do the right thing. Is there a communication opportunity here to simply say it better, say it in a way that it's not confusing? And maybe you don't have to change the code, maybe you just have to communicate a little more clearly. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I'll be honest, I have not seen the notices that go out.
Yeah.
Not recently anyway. My grandmother lived she built a house here at
Okay.
4500 South Jason.
All right.
And when she would receive a notice, I was the one who jumped in my car and went over and rectified it. So,
It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
At my own house in Highlands Ranch recently, I got it. So I know,
Yeah.
I get it. So that's something I would be happy to, sit down with Dave and his team and look at and see if, and look at the language of the colors, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, is
Yeah,
it
no.
scary or is it educational?
Right.
If it's educational, say so.
Yeah, happy-
This is an educational notice. You're not in trouble. But if you don't do the following, you can be in trouble. Okay. And it doesn't go on your record. It doesn't go into the tally. But it also says, cut your weeds.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, I think that would help. Thank you.
You bet.
Actually, Chris, could you actually tell us what exactly communications protocols are that you deal with?
Can you repeat the question?
What communications do you deal with as your group
With regards to code enforcement or in general?
in general?
I brought some handouts because I think this would be helpful. So, council members, you could pass that direction. I think this will help you a lot. So in our department, we have a community engagement plan and we also have a strategic communications plan. And we're promoting just about everything that the city does. We publish the Englewood magazine. I would say that's our primary way to reach every resident and every business in the city. From time to time, we do door hangers, we do postcards. We have what I think and I think City Manager Lewis would agree, I think some exciting changes coming with some community signage that we're going to install at strategic locations throughout the city. But I think if you want to take a moment just to look at this toolbox, this matrix, this really illustrates all the different ways that we communicate with residents in this city of Englewood. And this is, I think, maybe 3 or 4 pages from the strategic communications plan. And I'd be happy to send copies of both of those documents to this board.
Yes, when you mentioned cost.
Yeah.
How is that? Is that a cost to the city, the committee? How does that, if we wanted to enhance something along the social media line, is there a cost associated with that? 'Cause I don't think we have a budget.
It depends, is the answer. So
Okay.
social media, when we can, we like to what's called boost a post, which means more eyeballs. We can do targeted boosts. However, sometimes, especially Facebook, will not allow us because they will call those boosts political in nature. And we're not allowed to boost those posts. And it's kind of hit or miss, to be honest with you. I think with code enforcement issues, we would be more successful in boosting those posts, especially if, let's say, if it was a video that didn't include a city council member. It was strictly educational without a council member. We would be more successful it would be a greater reach if we could boost those posts. And again, those are targeted boosts, so they're reaching residents within the city.
Does your group provide the tools to do that? Would they create for us if we wanted to do something like that?
As far as the
content?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Here's another example. So this was a campaign that we put together for off-leash dogs, and we worked with Dave and his team. So this is probably a better example than what I just gave you of what we can do for this board and for code enforcement in general. Yeah, this is back in 2020. This actually predated our strategic communications plan and our community engagement plan. But this to give you a really good idea of what we.
Where were these?
If you're okay, so, yeah, I know you just asked me.
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't hear.
I didn't know if he knew where you put them.
I didn't, so maybe Chris can answer the, because this is just a formal.
No. So this here is an internal document, what you're seeing. Yes, this was our engagement campaign for off-leash dogs. So this will, our strategies and messaging, that's what I would like you to look at.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. I thought you put these out there.
No.
Was all of this done as in association with the off-leash?
Yes.
Okay.
What did you reach on social media?
Again, it depends. If we're able to boost posts,
Well, I mean, how many people do you have following on Facebook?
I believe right now we're 8,000 on social, just on Facebook alone. I mean, our goal is, our recent goal was 10,000. So when you consider our population size, I think that, that's pretty good.
I think it's effective.
I'm sorry.
I think it's very effective. I'll find things on Nextdoor or on Facebook, and then I'm like, oh, what's going on? And it's quick and it's right there. And
I think our challenge is that, we're not reaching everybody on social media. So we have to have a mix of tactics where we reach everyone. And again, I keep going back to the Englewood magazine, because that's really the only way we consistently reach every resident and every business within the city limits. Now, sometimes the timing, does not coincide with, with messaging. Our deadlines are driven, I think we just talked about this, our deadlines are driven by the Parks and Recreation, their deadlines for their programming. So that, that's what drives that. So our summer issue really comes out in the spring. Our fall issue really comes out in the summer, and so on and so forth. And we're only doing that 4 times a year.
But that actually, I think, is good for us to know, because we're kind of running in line with what Parks is doing. When code enforcement is going to be out doing their summer planning, we probably should be giving a heads up to our neighbors. Hey, it's that time of year again when we need to be concerned about our weeds, and here's what you might get. And give them a heads up of here's what the warning notice looks like. Here's what you should expect. Here's what we would love for our neighbors to do, that we can actually use this to be an inviting way to pull our neighbors in. And then if we have the non-compliance issues, then we can respond to those the proper way. But that I think, I do last meeting or the meeting before, that my first year living here, it was the same thing. I got the notice and my response was to hang my "Don't Tread on Me" flag in my front yard and go mow my back lawn, because I never use my alleyway. But then I learned that I wasn't going to get another one. Probably grew higher before I got back there and mowed it again before it was, fall and everything stopped growing. But I like this idea of us being able to address our neighbors and just giving them a heads up of saying, folks, this is what's going to happen. Here's what it's going to look like. We want everybody to just be in compliance and care for the neighbors who live next to each other.
It's proactive.
It's proactive, and it also says, I think we even ahead of time can put in numbers to call to say, if you get one of these notices and you are actually, like my wife, growing sunflowers that are taller this year than in previous years even, that you are proactive, maybe even with code enforcement. and giving them a heads up. Hey, this is what I'm growing in my front yard. I just want to tell you, this is my address, here's where I am. If you have any issues, fine, leave me a notice and I'll respond to you again. But I think part of our job is, one, to care for our neighbors and give them a heads up of what enforcement's going to do. But I think maybe even giving our neighbors information so that, one, they're better informed, and two, maybe it makes the job of code enforcement easier as well. Right?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna give you a loaded question. If you were able to communicate on a monthly basis with everyone in the city, would you take advantage of that? Oh, absolutely. Okay. So if things were different and say we could put a notification in a utility, would that help?
So we can do that,
Okay.
and we have been doing that. I think the issue is how everybody wants to do that now. So I'm getting, multiple departments saying we want to put something in the utility. And I think we need to be careful. I think we want to do one per bill. More than that, I think they're going to wind up in the trash. But that is an option that's out there. And I think, I inquired with my staff and I said, hey, I spoke with Sean and we want to do more with utility bills. I'm like, hey, did you know we're already doing one for, the next 3 months? And so, yeah, and then that is a possibility. I think postcards are very effective.
I'm trying to think of a cheap way to do it.
Yeah, and that's not a cheap way to do it.
What do you mean putting, postcard?
Yeah,
I'm referring to the stuff.
Utility billing is a very effective way to get the messaging out there. Maybe it's some sort of newsletter, I don't know. Instead of just one message, maybe there's multiple.
City newsletters.
Yeah, we have the magazine, right? But that's only quarterly. So maybe that's something to take advantage of. We're doing something with more messaging monthly.
How much does it cost us to do the quarterly newsletter?
The magazine?
Yeah.
Oh,
What does it cost? Do you have a rough estimate of what it costs?
I have a rough estimate, so it's expensive.
Okay.
So postage just went up, so postage is about 8,000. We're paying a consultant to help us with the graphic design. That's 10,000 per issue. We have a copywriter that's about between 3,000 and 4,000 per issue, depending.
It's a lot cheaper than doing a recall election. Okay, that's all I want to know.
But in this year's budget, as Councilmember Russell knows, we were trying to contain those costs, and we're going to bring the magazine.
Sure, but
so yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to say it costs the city, and I just did the math on this, $2.30 per address to send all of that information to each household and to each business. And I was speaking with a resident. This was a couple of years ago. Had asked about the cost of the magazine. And I said, it's, a cup of coffee now is $6, $8, it depends. It's $2.30 to get all city news. I think that's.
The question that I have is, how do we make sure the communications are accurate with what code actually says? It's not just getting the message out there, but is it accurate according to code?
That's a great question. I mean, typically in the communications department, whether it's, Dave's division or another department, they supply us with content. And if we have, I don't have the staffing where we can, fact check everything that comes to the department. But, we'll work together. We'll typically, just presume that what's coming into us as content is accurate. And if we have questions, we'll certainly reach out.
And if I can add to that, there are multiple people that review the newsletter, not just for their particular content that they've set forward, but I like to review the whole magazine before it comes out and suggest any kind of edits or changes that I may perceive as being worded incorrectly or something that we can add on. So how many people review a magazine before it goes out?
So we have, so when we are ready for the magazine to go to press, we will send it through a system called Review Studio. So every department director, including the city attorney, and multiple staff members have the opportunity to review things. And they'll make edits and they'll make comments. It's not just my department, it's just not my set of eyes on that. It is a lot of, including our consultant. So many, many, many people see that magazine before it goes to press.
Okay, so in the past, we've had on this committee, a communications committee, and actually at the beginning, and this may have been 4 or 5 years ago, the committee themselves we were choosing the topics for each magazine to deal with whatever was seasonal at that time. And then didn't some of the committee members get to kind of draft that?
So what originally the process was, and I, Sonia was part of this at one point, was we didn't have, Chris wasn't with us when that process was going.
Actually, when I first started that project, it was with Julie.
Oh, yes, that was with Julie.
It was, yeah.
And we didn't have copywriters that would source the content. And so they were left to write the articles, send it forward for editing and changing within the magazine. Now we have a copywriter. And so this group can put together topics to move forward in a timeline. The subcommittee and copywriters can put together everything based off of information that this group provides.
And at that time, I worked with Julie, and she worked with my staff, and we put together a communications plan for code enforcement for the entire community.
Great.
We'd be happy to do that.
Something probably need to do. Going on something that Mike said earlier with the helping people, the snow removal is also an issue. It's not just the weeds. So if we can get stuff in there earlier regarding snow removal, is there any assistance or anything if there's elderly people? That
Through the neighborhood resources.
Put that information in there, because there's a lot of people.
So multiple times a year, I don't want to rain on your thunder, but the community, Madeline, put together Snow Buddies. So we do have a program where people are identified in neighborhoods that want to go and help. And so multiple times on social media, within the magazine, it is publicized, especially when we're having a heavy storm. We're having a heavy storm, remember to clear. If you need help, please contact the Snow Buddies and sign up. So we try to be proactive, especially with snow, because it's more of a serious seasonal issue with people commuting.
And I would say that we have, in our program, we have, I think, 30 volunteers. And I belong to a communicators group for Arapahoe County. And the other cities were blown away by how many volunteers we had compared to their cities. Now, 30 is not nearly enough. We obviously have more people needing help. We have volunteers for, but we're helping a lot of people. And we promote that program.
The magazine.
Everywhere. It's called Snow.
Never seen.
Oh, it's in there. It's in there. It's called Snow Buddies.
Okay.
No, I missed Snow Buddies.
You gotta read that thing better. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Food for thought. Yeah. And I think it pertains to code enforcement. I think it pertains to Sustainability Commission. I have a smartphone and I have a computer. And when I go to the Englewood website, forgive me, there's an avalanche of information. There's so much information. And I'm lazy. I don't pick and peck. If it doesn't jump out at me, I turn the page. What I would like, I think, and again, it's food for thought, not trying to tell you how to do your job. I think it'd be really cool if committees like ours had something on the website that was a bulletin board. So let's use code enforcement. I go to the website and I go weeds. Weeds. Okay, maybe there's a sentence on weeds. Code enforcement is responsible for helping us keep manicured weeds in Englewood. I want to go deeper. I want to go into the weeds. There's a link. Boom. That takes me into more granular information that says, here's the rule, here's the code, here's how we do it, here's why we do it. I want more. Think. You know what I'm saying? I can go down that road. I may go to the bulletin board and I'm done. I might just say, they're working on it. That's good. Or I might say, I want Sustainability Commission. We come up with topics and it's, how deep do we want to go? How much do people care? And you get lost of how much is enough, how much is repetitive, how much. I just would love it if we had that ability. We've got the technology that I can go as deep in the weeds as I want to go. And maybe the bulletin board itself might say, in progress, stay tuned. We're working on it.
When you say bulletin board, what do you mean by bulletin?
Oh, my grade school, we had a bulletin board.
I think he's saying create.
Yeah.
Create, I think he's saying create one for each area, code enforcement.
Citywide or something. If you said bulletin board, code enforcement, click.
Yeah.
Codes, weeds,
So,
click.
so
It just,
Yeah,
it
we
just
can-
takes me down that path. Sustainability Commission, energy efficiency, or organizations that help whatever. Boom, they're working on it. I'm done. No, I want to know more. Boom, boom, boom. I can go down that path as far as I want to go. So I can be knowledgeable. And there's a lot of topics, some hot topics in Englewood that I think could have been diminished. Because there's a frustration of either is the city listening to us or is the city telling us? And there's a balance there, which is there's a piece of communication, which is what's up. I just want to know what's up. Is there a development project along Englewood Parkway? I used to hear there was something going on there. And then I accidentally found out, the developer pulled out of that project. I think that's newsworthy. So that's a bulletin board. It's on hold. Stay tuned. We don't know what we're, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a two-way street, and it to me, it should be so user-friendly that for a lot of us, we're lazy. I just want to know it's on the bulletin board and somebody's working on it. Or I want to drill down and I want to know the facts. Where are we? Because I think the city has answers. I think it's all there.
Yes, we have a relatively new website. And when I was with the former city, we actually did a focus group where we had the residents, talking about what you're just talking about, sit down with our website, with our webmaster and try to find what you want to find. But as soon as you get frustrated and can't find it, that's when we, kind of gather that data and say, how can we now improve that experience? So maybe that's something we can.
So if I said right now, everybody take truth serum. What are the 3 hot topics in Englewood? I'll bet you we could come up with what they are and they could be on a bulletin board. And it's like, what do we need to hear and what do you need to know? That's all I'm saying. It sounds easy. It's not easy, but I just ask you to think about that.
No, I appreciate that. I do.
Okay.
So I have a question about the magazine. What's the timeline on getting things into the magazine prior to the magazine?
So we are just about to start working on the winter edition. So we do publish, I'll get that to Dave. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. There are so many different tasks within the magazine. And when you think about, we have the city news section, well, really the bigger piece of it is the recreation guide. So I think they're already working on the recreation guide for the winter edition. So if that's something that is, by the way, you have access to that if you go to eHub, it's on the communications page. It's one of the first things that you can see. And you're welcome to share it with this group. I think I just sent that to you.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what kind of timeline we would have to be able to submit something, in this case for the winter. So
What happens is we will send out an email with a link. And if you have a subcommittee for communications, or Dave, whomever that may be, you just click on that link and you submit your story ideas and submit. And you're done.
We have Dave.
Yeah, if you submit things for me, I will submit
If
it.
you can't, it's portal.
Okay, that's good. So that's something we'll need to bring back up.
And so for winter, for snow and ice, that's coming up.
Chris, we had this same kind of discussion with one of your people that were is in your office, and she made another presentation similar to what you're doing. Is it possible that the timeline that
you would need could be distributed to the chair people of all of the citizen committees in a way that, you know, you just give basically deadline dates. And that way, ahead of us having to ask someone, we would know what the deadline is for the next up and coming episode. And it would allow us to be able to sort of plan toward that.
It's a great question. It's something I've been talking with my staff about that, you know, we need to get those deadlines out at the beginning of the year to everybody that needs to know.
That would be great.
Yeah, then we could preemptively, I mean, we could do winter.
Right, we now.
Yeah, the previous one.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
No, good point.
yeah, we could have things ready and then edit them accordingly right before submission. And
Right, truthfully, you know, Dave wouldn't need to even wait for that email to go out. He could just, you know, he could proactively send us, you know, the information that we need. So, yeah, no, I think that's a great suggestion.
so for the winter guide, how close are you to that timeline right now? It doesn't have to be exact, just
Yeah, you'll see that. I think Dave's gonna see that email within the next 2 to 3 weeks. John was just pointing out that the snow buddies has been in the previous 3 winter editions, right? So, yeah. And I think that's a testament to why the program's been so successful.
oh, it's only in the winter one?
Is that the fall? We must have that on the fall. I'm not sure.
It's the winter edition that comes out in the fall.
Right.
Yeah, it's in, I was just, there, all 3 of the last 3 years.
It should come out prior to the first snowflakes.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
was-
It's actually a full page.
It says, it'll say winter issue, but it's gonna come, our winter issue is gonna come out. We go to press October 17th for the winter issue, so it's gonna be arriving in homes, you know, around Halloween.
And typically our first snows are about our last.
Yeah.
Halloween night. Any other communication related questions?
And I just would like to tell us we're happy to be a partner. We love working with Dave and his team, and excited to work with all of you.
We're very much appreciated. Thank you very much. This was great information.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Next on the agenda is the board nomination. So I don't know if everybody, I mean, I assume everybody knows why I'm here alone. In the last 3 weeks ago in the city council meeting, Chair Green resigned. So we will need to vote for new chair.
But I need to administer some oaths.
Oh, he needs to administer oaths.
Sonia, this is your certificate of appointment. And then I have 2 oaths to administer, one for Robert and one for Sonia. And so if you guys want to stand up and just repeat after me. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
So
He said it were made by Robert Watts.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Englewood,
Charter and ordinances of the city.
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
To the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties
faithfully perform the duties
of office as a member of the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee.
as a member of the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee.
Perfect. I will have you sign these afterwards. Congratulations.
Sorry, forgot that Monday night.
I have to do this much to start with the state of Colorado. Okay, on to the next. Nominations for chair. Would like to nominate someone. Rick.
I'd like to nominate you, Rob.
Thank you.
My second.
Thank you. All of those who agree, raise your hand. All those opposed? I guess I'm the new chair. So,
Congratulations.
thank you. Next order of business will be the vice chair then. There's no vice chair. Recommendations.
I'd like to nominate Mike Vincent.
I would second that. All of those who agree with that nomination, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mike.
Well, I don't know if it's congratulations, but thank you.
Has he been promoted? Were you alternate?
No,
You were appointed as a regular member.
yeah, I was just a regular member. I got sworn in the council meeting back in February.
Okay, perfect.
That was going to be my next question. Redavid. Member Redavid. We heard back.
I sent her an email. I have not heard anything back. And this would be her fourth meeting that she did not attend or have heard from.
What are our options to get other alternate members at this point?
That's the job of the council, right? We would have to go back to the city
Well,
council.
right, we do have to, however, I mean, you could recommend that she's removed, but where are we at with the quorum? How many people have to be here for a quorum?
4.
4?
Yes.
That's my,
So
6. I understand we have the quorum. Be nice.
the one thing that I believe is your option that you can do is you recommend that to the council that she be removed as the alternate for lack of attendance. If they miss more than 3 times, and does she ever contact anyone about whether she's coming or not?
At the request of Chair Watson now. I did reach out to her by email 2 weeks ago and I have not heard anything.
As soon as this all occurred, I immediately asked that they see if she wanted to be promoted to a regular member. And we haven't seen her for a few weeks or a few meetings anyway, so. So what do we need to do to do that? And then to get other alternate members, what do we need to do?
Now, so unfortunately, the council will not be able to appoint a member until the next go around, which is 6 months. So it'll be like, I think probably around October when we interview, is that correct? And then the appointment would go in January, I think. Does that sound right?
Okay.
Or you can just do nothing about it. I mean, I don't know that you would necessarily want to promote her if her attendance isn't.
No, at this point, I would agree, especially with 4 emails not being responded to and then 4 meetings missed.
So that is an option to recommend that.
And how do we do that?
You could make a motion right now, somebody make a motion. You vote on it and then it's
I can send the letter off.
Okay.
the council liaison.
Who would that be? Okay. So I'll make a motion to revoke alt member Redavid. Is there a second?
Second.
All those who agree with it? All those opposed? Motion carries. Can we go ahead and get them sent out? Thank you for helping with that. Okay.
And then as part of that, just as clarification, I will let the city clerk know that we have 1 member position and 1 alternate position open for the next round. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay. There only 1 alternate position? Okay, there is. All right. Okay. So next is significant events.
So the city manager, Sean Lewis, asked to address you and to talk about your request regarding data for parks and how to break that down. And so he wanted to give you to talk about and give you a little bit of an update. And speak to you on some other subjects. Unfortunately, we already publicized this and approved the minutes. So we felt it would be more appropriate to put under significant events, since this was something that you all had moved forward to.
Great.
So did that message go through to council? In other words, we put together our thoughts regarding data collection and reporting. And I'm just a little bit confused. Where is that? Did that happen or is that soon to happen?
That hasn't happened yet. We need to re-review some of those.
So can I?
Sure, please do, please.
Actually, because I knew you were writing the letter, I just asked
Okay.
him, one of my one-on-ones, is it possible for city staff to do that? And so I got an answer, and then I did see on here, on the agenda tonight, that the letter is in here, correct? Did I see the letter in here?
The letter is in here and, yeah. Is the letter in here based upon last meeting? Was it, because
Oh, was it in the,
I think it might have been in the.
was it in the,
There's 2 meetings.
okay, so it was, where I saw it then is in the draft.
Yes, and it was transmitted to city personnel.
Okay, and so that's why, yes, that's why I asked the question, so it has moved forward.
We have an update for you.
Yes, thank you. And I really just wanted to say that the request was made by Councilmember Russell. And I checked in with our IT department and they said that they have every ability to, make changes to the system in order to get more granular. So Dave, do you have
I do.
the list that they
Provide one to everybody.
Yes, everyone's gonna have one. This, great.
Good. So that was the list that code enforcement submitted, and really, I just wanted to make sure that this was what you were asking for.
So what we did with this particular process is the information that we were provided is we weren't able to originally pull that data because it had to be part of ordinance, and that's where we were getting it. IT suggested that we look at a special breakdown subcategory that they went ahead and added. And so between IT coming up with an original granular plan and then us looking at it and reviewing it with the department, broke it down into subcategories so that we are consistent when we do the reporting. So each subcategory has all of the things that would fit into that subcategory so that we would be able to pull that specific data. It doesn't correlate. It correlates only with the parks rules violation, but we have a separate category that we can pull each of these from.
Dave, does this make you happy? I mean, isn't this more helpful for you to have this granularity?
I think it will be more helpful for when we are looking to, because we like to use data to drive our enforcement process. And so if we're seeing a certain trend in a specific area of a park, is that being driven by citizen complaints or is it being driven by officer observed? And that also allows us to drive our team to a specific location if we're seeing more increases, or if we need to let police know that we're seeing an increase in drug use in a particular park. We can use that. Yes.
I would think it would.
And can you go to that granularity as far as whether it was reported by a patrol officer or?
Yeah, so if you remember on our quarterly statistics that we bring forward and then our annual report, we actually break down the calls for service and how we receive them. So whether it's by a citizen complaint or officer observed, initiated, if it's received from dispatch or referred by police or city employee.
Dave, so once what we get, what we will receive out of this, is it the subcategory? Is it the breakdown within the sub?
it will be the subcategory. And each of the smaller granular ones would go with that subcategory.
Okay, so if we get something on prohibited actions, we can assume it's something within. Is that correct? Yeah, that's better than that. So that's great.
And some of these, like marijuana, illegal substance use, really, it's a park rules violation, but it's not really something that code enforcement would be necessarily.
Fine objects or drones.
Yes.
What about smoking?
So that is a prohibited act that we do get involved in. We do provide education in that circumstance. We haven't issued any summons.
It is on the list though.
It is on the list.
Oh, it is?
It's on the last page, next to last violation.
Sorry. that was-
Second to last item on the first page.
I was looking at park prohibited act.
And we captured that one specifically because we didn't want to put like smoking and marijuana and other stuff because they're too different.
Yeah.
This was more just for us because I know council has asked them questions in the past about how many people are you encountering? This was a youth initiative where children were really concerned about people smoking in areas that they were recreating in. So this was an extra way that we can utilize to say, oh, we're contacting this person. I do have to let you know, this is the one area that we do have a limitation on. We can't go back to look at stuff. We can only select. And then the other limitation is we can only select one category. So we can't select more than one category on that breakdown list. There's not a way of doing that. So like with all of our other reports, we'll capture the most egregious offense. And then right in the body of the report, any other concerns.
That's so much more helpful. Yeah.
So it turned into a big deal because we were having a little ducky where you can wager to have a duck race. And people would have fundraisers to release ducks down the canals. And so it years and years ago before I was here was kind of big. We don't see it anymore.
And a Rotary fundraiser, I believe.
And it's illegal.
Some of them were getting stuck, some of them are getting away. Some members would like it, and so.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Drones, they are illegal in parks or,
They are prohibited from being utilized.
but we don't necessarily have a drone ordinance, do we? I mean, several years ago, we talked about drones before they became a big thing and I didn't think anything moved forward. So it's mostly just in the parks rules.
Yes, and so specifically with drones, it's actually not, it's not really a municipal police violation. That is something that is typically enforced through the FAA. There's been a lot of legislation specifically around that and at the state level.
Okay, so that got moved to the state level
Yes.
instead of municipalities.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Question for Sean. Sean, if you know, they're doing revisions of signage throughout the parks. Is there a correlation possibly within that signage as to what is on this list so that people in fact know that, you know, and I don't want to get granular on that sign, okay? That's not my point, but that people see the main topics of what are illegal in this park. And I know there are on some signs now that I can see in Bellevue Park, but I know one of the big initiatives and what pushes that I had a few months ago was try to get the information out specifically. So when they are approached in the park, you're not getting resistance. You're saying, but this is on the sign. You see it when you come in the door. Is there any correlation at all?
So, great question. We do get considerable pushback when we're doing enforcement regarding signs, that it's not on the sign. City Council had voted many years ago as to what our official form of communication regarding ordinances would be. And so we just had the revision of the signs and it was approved by a multitude of different community organizations, including Englewood Unleashed, as well as Parks and Rec Committee, as the city attorney's office. And so we only highlighted a few of the more egregious or ones that you would see like alcohol, dog concerns. And then we drive for other rules violations, please go to englewoodco.gov/parks. So they are being driven to those. If we were to put every single rule on there, we'd have a whole billboard.
I completely agree. I understand.
So
The correlation is what I'm looking for so that, you know, when something does happen, that there is something that you can actually point to on a sign and say, yeah, you broke this one.
We refer them back to the municipal, but again, we're not issuing, when our park ranger is out doing enforcement, enforcement is as little as having a conversation about the park rules. And so very few summonses for some of these park rules violations, unless it really is a health and safety, at-large animal, those types of things. We are providing education first and foremost. Our park ranger is very good at capturing information and people. And so if they encounter the same violation from the same person, that's when they would get a summons. Or a municipal violations bureau ticket.
Sorry, another question. Motorized vehicles, e-bikes?
I cannot answer that because that has not been defined as a vehicle as of right now. And I know you're a little bit more up to date on those vehicles because e-bikes are not considered a motorized vehicle in the state of Colorado, if I'm correct.
I think you're right, and it's very confusing. I have an e-bike, and on more than one occasion, I find myself saying, am I okay? I mean, I'm here, I'm on a sidewalk, I think it's a sidewalk, or it's a walk. I think it's confusing statewide, and I would welcome the clarification.
We
Council request.
Fine.
And I'm all about e-bikes, but they're not bicycles and they're not motorcycles.
And they go fast.
And they go
And
fast.
they are in danger in parks.
Yeah.
How fast do they go?
20 miles an hour, most of them.
Some of them can go 60.
Yeah.
miles an hour.
But the typical max for most of them is 20. Well, 20 miles per hour is pretty darn fast.
Right.
You get hit by a e-bike 20 miles per hour.
And a bike, and you're a dog that veers into your path of your bike as you're coming down.
Yeah. So
Or child.
it's,
But we just need to get that city attorney's office.
it's a current
Give it
event,
that.
and I think e-bike owners would welcome the clarification. Because
think
there's
both.
no man land out there of,
Yes.
am I right or am I wrong?
And we have received, we do have speed limit signs in Bellevue Park specifically because that's a major thoroughfare. And so we have been out and we do let people know, hey, you need to slow down, follow the signs. And it is a complaint that we receive from time to time. It's very rare, but I appreciate that clarification. And the state does need to also take that up. And that might be something that on my National Code Enforcement Committee and State Code Committee, I can bring that to them and be like, hey, can we get some more clarification on this?
I rode through Bellevue Park one day and there were all these people picnicking. And I slowed down and I asked myself that question, should I be here? You know, I mean, I don't know. And Highline Canal's confused. I think you're allowed on the Highline Canal, but the same question came up on the Highline Canal. Is it okay or not? Or is there a special speed limit? I don't know. So, room for improvement.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and so for clarification on the bikes, they are not considered a vehicle. And because they are not, they don't have a CC attached to them, they don't fall under the motorized bicycle or motorized scooter ordinance under the state. So if the state's left it as any bike lane, bike path, trail, anything like that, they're authorized on unless otherwise stated not. The feds, like Rocky Mountain National Park and that, have banned them because they are a motorized vehicle to the federal government.
Right.
A lot of jurisdictions, a lot of the state parks, they will have actually identifiers on the trails that, like they do with no motorcycle or motorbikes, dirt bikes, they'll actually identify what trails e-bikes are allowed on.
Okay.
So that may be something where the Parks and Rec Committee will have to look at where they want to allow e-bikes.
The rules were the same, federal, state, local.
That'll make all of our job.
After I can cancel a council request.
Yeah, that's fine. However, what generally happens when accidents start happening and people get hurt, then rules change, which is kind of sad that we're not preempting that.
The state did just open up their free e-bike rebate program today. So there's $5 million of e-bikes that'll be on the road this fall.
A lot of them out there, there's gonna be a lot more.
Maybe y'all should look at that.
It's an issue. I mean, it's.
If you would like to add that to your list of ideas, because I think there was going to be you guys generate a list annually of things that you want to potentially work on, and that might be something I know you've identified weeds as being one of your potential study sessions to see if we can improve that ordinance that you've mentioned, and now e-bikes. So those might be conversations that this board can move forward and preemptively be positive on.
I mean, I think that's the role of this committee is to make recommendations, and we don't need to wait for a request.
Right, exactly.
No, we should be out there pushing that agenda, so to speak, with council.
Would that preempt though the Parks and Rec Board, since that's in their purview from making that? I mean, how does that work? I feel like they would be the ones that need to make a recommendation to council on that.
Well, they make park rules, but
Right.
this board makes recommendations for code enforcement.
Could it be a joint recommendation? One of the same.
It could be.
Yeah, maybe it's something both boards.
Because that's what jointly this group along with Parks and Rec weighed in on both aspects of when we were working on off-leash privileged areas. So they weighed in on their recommendations, but this board also made their recommendations and suggestions once they made their recommendations. So I could go either way, I would think.
Rob, can I make a request or a motion that we, the committee, be provided with the federal guideline definition relating to e-bikes? Because I, for one, would be curious to read those. And if at all possible, I would wonder, could those be reflected into Englewood's ordinance code somewhere down the road? Because like I said, I don't want apples, peaches, and pears. I want apples, apples, apples. So if the feds have done some homework on this, I, for one, would be curious to look at what they have.
And you as a committee can determine what research you all want to do and bring forward as they've done with Emerald Ash Borer in the past and other topics.
How would we just have the communications here in the meeting, correct? That's not something we could send to the members without.
I think it can be distributed. So like information can be gathered by a member of this group and then we can distribute it. We just can't have conversations.
Okay, I can Google it. I mean, I guess I don't have to have somebody, but anyways, I have a curiosity about it. And it might be a starting point for discussion.
I not to interject or tell you anything, but the committee in the past, when they've had subjects come up, and Emerald Ash Borer was one of them, and Ms. Dickerson was very instrumental in doing a lot of research with that and bringing it forward, was members can take up what they're very passionate about and bring that research forward and ideas forward to this committee to work.
Mike, if you'd like to do that.
I'll volunteer to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
There's something else on that. The only other thing that I wanted to just, as a reminder for those of you that have been here at least as long as I have, which is only 4.5 years or so, is really that kind of the pendulum swing on weeds. Because when I got here, there were people coming to council every single week saying, you're not doing enough about weeds. Our alleys are out of control. And so we staffed up first year. We hired a seasonal code officer. It was the first time that had been tried. And I convinced council to squeeze that in the budget at the last minute when I got here while the budget was being put to bed. And that really helped. You know, we started kind of getting a handle on that. Last year, when we were having the great resignation, nobody could find employees. We had 2 that we ended up having to convert into 1 part-time, I think. So the same 2 seasonals, but we couldn't get any applicants for them. So we converted that to 1 part-time. And so because this year we're in a better labor market, we're able to hire the 2, and they've just, you know, they and the code staff have knocked it out of the park. But now we hear from the public, how dare you write so many tickets to us, or it's really not even tickets, just the notification. You know,
Communication.
yes, the communication, which I agree with you. We definitely need to improve that communication. So I just want to kind of give everybody perspective, just in my brief 4 years, the way this pendulum swings and we react with, okay, we're going to solve the problem. We're going to start writing lots of violations. But then people say, oh, you're being too heavy-handed. Stop writing so many violations. So, you know, I'm kind of just here to say, code enforcement is doing what, we have asked them to do as a response to, public input from a few years ago. And I'm sure Rita remembers when, and I had lots of meetings with lots of residents just about how upset they were about how the alleys weren't taken care of. So, and I'd love to have a conversation with you on that to ask you, do you think do we have too much? Do we have, what is the thought on that? I mean, you heard from a resident tonight about that. So who actually, it sounds like 1 in 4, enforcement. But again, where is that sweet spot? Make people happy.
Well, I can add to the confusion. Sustainability Commission, and we're green, we like green stuff. We like growth. And so we have had discussions and we've had community input. Brace yourself, Dave.
I know, I've heard it.
But it's interesting. Are weeds pollinator gardens? And there are people who, and I love them, they take pride in their pollinator gardens and they put time and energy. And not there are violations and conflict out there. I have a neighbor who has this beautiful sunflower in front of his house. I think it's terrific. There might be neighbors who think it's awful, but it's a jungle of sunflowers. Are those weeds? Different botanists could answer the question in different ways. And so to throw into the mix, as we look at codes and enforcement, what's reasonable? What's reasonable? If somebody says, I took out turf, I put in low water plants, and most of them are pollinators, and they grow to 10 inches tall. And then what do we expect of code enforcement? And, is there basic training we could give them? Is there a guidebook, what's reasonable? I don't know. But I'm just saying, there are citizens out there that don't want to have their pollinator gardens and their landscaping ideas affected by a weed ordinance. So how do we specify? How do we clarify? How do we make it reasonable and understandable?
Yeah, if I can address that, I think the code has done a really, really good job of threading that needle.
Okay.
Insofar as really when I think Dan Brown has been a resident who has been very vocal about defending residents who have pollinating plants.
Mhm.
And I think that y'all even worked to sort of create a list that you now maintain a list.
We have a small list.
Yeah, and what's it? Milkweed. I was turning in milkweed in the city. And come to find out, people are planting that because it's a butterfly.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Nature butterfly source of food.
Yeah.
And so, I no longer turn this in, but code had already developed a list saying
Okay.
these are and aren't allowed. So I think we've threaded that needle pretty
Okay.
well, unless we're hearing other.
Well, and I want the citizens to know they've been heard. And it is being incorporated. They're not being blown off. And I love your appeal. It seems to me there's an appeals process. If you want me to cut down my pollinator garden, I can call you up.
Call me and say, we have this all the time when you talk about sunflowers. We have these beautiful sunflowers on Dartmouth. I think they're amazing. They're beautiful. But we also run into where they're obstructing the sidewalk and we're getting complaints about them. So we have to work within a balance. And if you're intentionally planting, we've talked about this, and this is why I think we should have maybe just a whole meeting about the process and what it looks like and what ordinance could potentially look like. I think it's a very impassioned topic, just like dogs. So I think it could be a whole meeting that we could have, or a couple.
I think we should use either the Arapahoe County or the state toxic noxious weed list and just be very informative with code enforcement and people, and there'll be pictures and say what they are. Anything from Russian thistle to tumbleweed, whatever you want to call it, and say, okay, get it out of the ground now before it seeds. And because a lot of people in my neighborhood are going to native plants, which is great for the environment. And I think just maybe changing a few things in the code. So it's, as long as it's not on the noxious weed list, that it should be, and it's not blocking view or it's not cactus
The hazard of it.
like hazard or anything, I think maybe we can make some changes.
We could, and it's noxious weed is not referred to in the code. However, I do want to put another twist. We've gotten off topic, but another twist is the state officially has started the process of sunsetting the board that evaluates the noxious weeds. So just so you are all aware, that process that the state has established is actually doing away with that board.
The scary thing about that is noxious weeds are very dangerous. And if they get out of control, we will have a problem, so.
We have quite a few here already in the city. And so we also are approaching this, just so you all know, is if you look at overgrowth, and we're not talking about, small or intentionally planted stuff. We're looking at what happens to this growth. All this overgrowth eventually will become dry and become kindling. And so we're really also not just looking at the aesthetics of the community, but we're also trying to prevent any potential fire hazards that may be as a result. And we've been very strict with vacant properties this season. We have abated many vacant properties more than once already. So just so you all know, we are being more cognizant of those types of situations.
That's all I've got.
Are there any more questions for the city manager? Okay, thank you very much.
Can we do a motion to approve list, if that's okay, so we can move forward with enacting that? If you guys are comfortable with the list of the park rules.
Oh. Okay, we need to do that. Are there any questions about the park rules list that was handed out? We'll move to vote to approve. Oh, okay. You were looking at me. I just.
Oh, no, I.
This would be a great list to get out to the public. I mean, the granular, because I think that, some of these are not that obvious. Park use violation doesn't necessarily, in my mind, imply metal detectors. That's a header topic that I think citizens would like to know what that means. What is a park use violation? It's on this list.
And I would have never guessed canopies based on.
And full disclosure, I launched a model rocket last month in a park. It got stuck in the tree, so I was taught my lesson, but I didn't realize that was.
I had no idea geocaching and stuff too.
Right, I didn't either.
This is good stuff.
Yes, it is. It's good information.
Well, and if you look on there, a little clarification, if you see the parks prohibited action, everything under that list is outright prohibited.
I think right now.
The parks prohibited actions, there's stuff that's outright prohibited. The park use violations, it's allowed, but there's rules behind it. So the whole list on the second page, the granular details, is actually all the park rules that are on the website. And each one of those has a separate description of what's allowed and not allowed. All of those were taken and broken down into these categories. So like metal detecting is allowed, but there's rules behind it. Geocaching is allowed, but there's rules behind it. Canopies are allowed with a permit.
Okay.
So that's where there's different requirements of use. That's why we broke it down in prohibited and into use. So that's what it's on the website. And that's why they go into a lot more detail, like races are allowed with a permit. So there is a lot more information where, like you said, it would be a billboard to put every little detail on it. But with the voluntary compliance with education, I get 4th of July, we'll get big neighborhood parties in the park. Well, if it's over 15 people, they have to get a permit from the Parks Department. So that's the education side, to let them know. Organize an event, a group of friends, all go on Facebook and say, hey, we want to go and play soccer one day. Well, if it's over 15 people and organized by the park rules and the Parks Department, they have to have a permit. So I don't think we could do all that granular, That's why it's broken out in those different ways on that. But we have left a lot of concerns like the dangerous animals, the at-large, the smoking, the alcohol, the fishing, the vehicle violations as separate, because I think those are the ones we're going to run into the most traditionally. And those are the ones we're going to be able to do. I mean, the prohibited use and the park violations, we're not going to see that many a year of those. And those, we could find the exact specifications in the report.
And I guess where I was going with that is that it would be nice, again, back to communication. Okay, if going in the spring, this was included in the quarterly as, did you know that these are allowable or not allowable activities in the park? Be aware, do something as far as an educational piece within that. And I think that's the purview of our committee is to help.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and vote to approve. Anybody want to?
I'll motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second. All those in favor of approving them?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is update from City Council Liaison.
So my report has just become very easy because one of the things was the list we just approved. The other thing that I did bring up in I'll just ask the city manager, because I think the city attorney said this. I asked about, because I know that one thing you all wanted on the agenda for tonight was to talk about moving back to City Hall. And asked if that could be a possibility. And what I was told, I believe, by the city manager is that, not the city manager, the city attorney, that you were thinking about using the community room for all boards and commissions because of the technology available up there. So you could confirm for me while we're here that would be an option if this board decides to do that?
Well, it's really a bigger conversation about all boards and commissions. What we have right now, if you even look at the two meetings going on tonight, almost simultaneously, one has the ability for people to call in, and witness live in person. We do not. And there are different technological, capabilities in different rooms. And one of the issues that we have, for instance, on a board that Rita and I and Budget Advisory Committee, is that it's behind locked doors. And there's no way without going and letting people in. To me, that is not open and transparent government. And I appreciate that Dave and AJ got the ability to do that here, that doesn't seem to be a problem here. But my point is we have all these boards and commissions meeting all over the city, and it's becoming difficult, to make sure that we have the technology to achieve the council's goal, which is every meeting has to have the ability to be in person or hybrid. If somebody needs it to be hybrid, that's the direction that we were given by council. And that's really challenging in some rooms of the city. So the other thing that's happened is that I have denied, and council could override, but bringing a budget request to you all for a new video, audio, visual tech person in the IT department. We simply don't have really the budget for that right now relative to a lot of other priorities. And I think it would be better if we just said all meetings are in a room that a facilitator can turn a button on. It's recording, they open a Teams, the Teams link is listed for the public to be able to call into and participate and view. And so that's what I'm talking to the communications department, Chris Hargeth, as well as the IT director, interim IT director, Joe Eisenbar, and his team about right now is how to do that. So it's not a matter of I have a preference on where somebody meets. It's a matter of consistency and how the public accesses our boards and commissions. It's also, consistency with council that, they get a higher level of engagement from the public being when they're in the council chambers. But I also can't afford to keep staffing planning and zoning commission in the council chambers with, the security that's required because there's a metal detector. I want that moved into the community room. I want Board of Adjustments and Appeals moved into the community room because it's a way of standardizing processes and procedures and making it more accessible to the public too. So That was probably more than what you wanted.
Well, but no, that's perfect.
That kind of the vision, obviously, we need to make sure we can do that from a technology standpoint and also get council to weigh in.
Thank you for that. And so, I mean, I think that's something still this board wants to talk about.
Well, this room, I mean, I've watched your meetings. I mean, it isn't a great room for these meetings. But, you know, I noticed that again, this board does not have the hybrid option, but meeting at the same time, Historic Preservation Commission has the hybrid option, so.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So my question would be, how could we meet in that room right now when they're meeting in that room?
Well, good question. I mean, that you have lots of scheduling issues too, and we have multiple boards that meet, you know, similar nights, but.
Is Historic Preservation meeting in the community room tonight or?
I have to look where their location is. I think they're in a different room too.
They were like on the third floor before, I think.
I think that might be Pikes Peak, yeah.
But I know one of our issues was other groups meet the same time or overlap enough that this space just became available and with no overlapping, no issues. And we could actually do a live recording of the meeting. That was the biggest concern. But if we can get a place in city council that does all the stuff, then yes, let's do that. But as our current best option, this is actually it as our current best option, unless the city can give us the better option of the hybrid, of the room where we can do all that stuff. And fine, let's go back, let's do that. But meeting in a room that doesn't have any technology, and just because we're at the city, doesn't actually help.
Right, but that is something that this board needs to address with each other. Thank you.
And right now, the community room couldn't be used because it doesn't have the ceiling mics. You gotta have ceiling mics. But my question is, why does every conference room in the city have ceiling mics for virtual meetings except for the community room? So IT is trying to work on the technology solution, but there's a lot of investigation still to happen before any of that would take place. I'm looking at 2024, you know, at the earliest just to figure out if it's even a possibility. So it's just an assessment at this point.
We're scheduled here for next year, I think, or through the end of the year, is that correct? So we're scheduled here through the end of the year. Great.
It's a little chilly.
We can work on that part. If I may, I know that Rick and Mike and Mike's all wanted conveyed when we had the conversation about the room that they wanted to, as part of this, to be open to the public as a way of bridging concerns related to the police department, code enforcement, and the community, and being more welcoming in this space. So I think that was something that you all brought up.
That was obviously something I think that's a benefit and absolutely. My concern has to be that we as a committee and as a community committee need to be as welcoming and as open as possible to anyone who wants to come in. And I feel personally, and I'm speaking for myself, that there may be resistance out there for people wanting to walk into the police department headquarters and coming into that facility to lodge a complaint, to express themselves openly. And I want to make and clear that path as much as possible. And if it means that we move this to another area that is more of a, I'll call it a neutral facility, then I think that we need to continue to proceed.
Yeah. My only pushback to that would be, I feel safer here, actually. And if anybody in our community is going to be a face of this group and say our police department is actually a safe place where we can come and do community interactions and we're not actually interacting with law enforcement, I might be the face of that. And so maybe I need to do a better job of being the public face of saying, you can come here and make any statements you want to make here, and you shouldn't have any more fear of having to be engaged with law enforcement than you actually do going to a city council meeting where you actually have to go through a metal detector and your bags get searched. It's more intimidating to go to a city council meeting than it is, I would say, to come here. And you have, there are cops right in front of you. I'm just saying, like, you have to engage with law enforcement directly to go to a city council meeting.
It's not just city
Here you
council.
go.
It's not just city council. You're going to the city hall. So city hall, police department, I mean,
I consider City Hall the center of citizens. That's why it's, and that's the place that citizens come
Yeah.
to meet. And again, I'm not, it's a good facility, agree, it has lots of benefits to it, but I'm trying to view this from not my perspective. I feel fine. I don't know that others do.
Well, and I mean,
You know, and.
I'll be blunt, I'll put it on the record, I'm viewing it as the blackmail coming to this building.
I appreciate it.
Mike and I.
So point of order, I think
Just saying.
this is part of my report and we only have like 10 minutes left. And I think this wasn't really on the
I'm just
agenda for
enjoying
discussion.
yeah, no, it's a good conversation to have. I mean, we need to have it. So that's something, I mean, we're going to be here through the end of the year. There's no way we get into another, and even if there was another room, we would have to be able to hit that room on the same night every month at the same time and without interfering with somebody else's meeting that may have gotten to the scheduling book before we did. So.
And if I get just one quick thing on this, I did reach out after our last meeting to the city clerk again for rooms that are available. And I was actually directed to the 2023 handbook for members of board and commission. I didn't know this, so it was education for me. But meeting location and time, the city clerk's office or designee shall designate meeting locations for city board, commission, and committees. It's policy of city council that meetings fall on what city manager Lewis said of what city council requests. So actually it would be the city clerk's office to designate locations. So I would refer that back to city manager Lewis of what location he would like us to use for this commission meeting.
Can I ask a question, Rob? Mike, I want to put you on the spot. This goes to everybody on the commission. And forgive me in advance if I'm stepping over a border here. What's the advisory group's opinion on officers in uniform? If there's an intimidation factor of coming into this space, into this room, is there an intimidation factor when we have armed representatives from code enforcement? And if I'm stepping on toes, forgive me, but I mean, that can be intimidating. I mean, they've got sidearms. So is that?
No, they don't. No,
You got a uniform.
I mean, they've got tools to maybe deal with wildlife and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But beyond that, they don't have law enforcement
Okay.
tools like.
And like I said, this is just an open-ended
Tasers.
question.
Yeah.
If we want to be user-friendly and we want the community to feel comfortable coming to our meetings, is that something we should consider? And that's not aimed at anybody. That's just looking at it from the community's point of view.
Trying to view this from a community, and we are on tape.
Oh, that's right.
So we know that, people see what's going on in this committee room. They see uniformed officers. And is that an issue that blocks or prevents people from coming and being in this environment? And that's the open question that I share with Mike. Is it something that we need to think about? We need to consider? Is it resistance? Do we need to ask community members, go out between meetings and say, hey, what do you think? And come back with opinions? Maybe that's just a straw poll thing that we could do.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword because it also, if you have a rabble rouser or a problem person, I'm very glad to have a uniformed officer in the room. So I don't know the balancing act. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we need code enforcement representation.
I'm not saying they don't, they're here. They're
So you're saying out of uniform?
that they come in civilian dress.
There are regulations or rules against or for that? Or?
Can you answer that technically?
I think we're maybe a little bit off topic.
Yeah.
Towards the end, and that's something that you can, I would have to talk with my chief about. You know, we work all day in this uniform. You know, this is what we represent in the community, and the more that people can associate our uniforms with our job.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, I just don't see the problem. Yeah.
And I can talk to you about this from the diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, because I'm the chair of that committee later, but
I think it's an issue out there. I think it could be an issue. Don't know if it's an issue because we don't know if people are feeling intimidation when they come and speak before this citizen group. And I want to make this as a comfortable a place as we can. So
It's a question. That's all it is. And I don't have an answer.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. and move on. Was that was everything you had?
Yes.
I just wanted to be just a little, I just wanted to be, and I honestly, I mean, I'm not the person who's gonna step on people's toes if they're talking about stuff. So that's what we want to do. But we will stick to this picture as well. So, there's no updates on the communications subcommittee. I will deal with that. Unfinished business. The letter is in here, I believe. But we're not gonna, we're gonna push that off to the next meeting. Sorry, I didn't realize we were that close. So we'll move that to the next meeting. New business, new discussion. We dealt with that in the communications Q&A, I think quite a bit. Is there anything on that that we really needed to?
no, from my standpoint, I think new business. We've talked about the two things, and maybe at the next meeting, we could talk about some priorities that you guys want to work on. I think that might be a good opportunity for you all to talk about. When do you want to schedule talking about weeds, and do you want to talk about any other subjects?
Well, yeah, I mean, just what I would like to eventually pick up on, you had mentioned that we had a full meeting on just the process. All of them. I mean, I would like to do that sooner than later, just so everybody was clear on what they are and how things can be.
And I wanted to check in with this group. How are you feeling with boards and commissions packet? Do you feel like we should provide like an additional training other than just the video that may have been sent out, or the documents about how to run this board? What are your guys' thoughts? Do you want us to resend information? Do you want to have maybe the city clerk come and do, someone from their office maybe do a quick training with you all? Do you guys feel comfortable with? Because there's been a shift in this board with new members and changes, and so I wanted to pose that to you all as well.
Thoughts? Go ahead.
I think maybe somebody coming in and beyond just us reading the code, maybe somebody with a little bit more legal knowledge actually helping us better understand the code sections that we're responsible for might be helpful for us.
So would that be the city clerk?
No, we could go over those types of points. So if you would like the next meeting to be more of a training opportunity versus a business, that's up to you all to decide, you as the chair to determine it. I just wanted to get kind of a consensus.
Yeah, I think it would help us address citizens' issues better if we actually got to get into the nuts and bolts of that.
No, I agree. I mean, does that sound good for the other members? Okay, can we plan on that for the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just go over some basic etiquette, Bob's rules of order. We'll also go over just quickly your bylaws, because you are due to review those as well as part of this transition, and to determine if there's any changes with that. We can go over boards and commissions requirements and rules, just to kind of highlight a few things for everyone. I know the city clerk put this on earlier, but not everyone was able to attend. And so maybe that might be a good opportunity just to realign everyone here and make sure that we are all, if you all want that.
Rita, you might weigh in on this. The Sustainability Commission is talking and thinking about this. I think it's healthy for all of us to be reminded what our role and responsibility is. As I understand it, these are advisory groups. These are citizen volunteers who are giving input to council. we make recommendations. We do not have authority. So if we made a recommendation, we think a code change should say X, Y, Z, and we present it to you and you consider it. And if council says, what do you think? And you say, we think it should be Z, X, Y. They make the decision. I think sometimes we get hung up with, we're not making code here. We're stirring the soup. And council can consider what we come up with. So if we have a consensus, let's say we have 7 members, consensus means most of us agree on this. We could have 2 or 3 who drastically disagree with our recommendation. So we say XYZ City Council, you say thank you, and there's 2 people on this group who say that's wrong, I disagree with that. That's for you to consider, right? Correct. And I just think we need to be reminded of that sometimes because we struggle so much as if we're writing policy.
Well, I
You know,
that's
And
what he said was,
particularly for new members, that sustainability goes through this too. We have to catch ourselves. It's like we're getting way too granular here. We're not writing code, we're not writing law. We're weighing in is all we're doing. So if that, I think that would help.
But I think that there is value in the fact that we are weighing in and that we are given the position to weigh in. And while, yes, I think we have beaten a horse beyond what we've needed to in the past, I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we should know the code that we're called to operate in. And I'm saying it because I say it to myself, like, and what I do for a living, a lot of times I'm talking to myself, that we do know the code and that we are making meaningful recommendations to the council to help them make those final decisions. Yes, we are not the final decision group, but we are advisors to the final decision group. And I think that, you know.
And we're citizens.
Yeah,
We're citizens.
Yeah, we live here. We're skin in the game. We have skin in the game.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
so I'm gonna follow all this under committee member's choice. So we just.
Good job, Chair.
And we've also discussed what the topic for the next meeting is going to be. And then the next meeting's on September 20th.
Yes, it is.
Do we still have citizen or member choice, or is that over?
No, go ahead. Did you have something? Go ahead.
Yes, I do. This is hard to say, but I am very upset and alarmed at the abrupt departure of our chairperson. Very upset. I'm very upset because I know that the tone that this last meeting took, and it created an environment that was very stressful for everyone here. And until that person responded to an email that I sent to him, I was unaware. And I think that if you walked into this meeting, you were here and all of a sudden said, you know what, he's not here anymore. That's the kind of thing which is alarming. There was something happening here. I don't know what it is, and I'm not asking for explanation, but I do feel that this incident tarnished this committee, not just here, but in the community, in the city, to know that a person, that our previous chairperson stood up before council and offered his resignation abruptly. If it was related to the fact that he was moving, he certainly could have said something about it ahead of time. He certainly could have led us into that. He was the kind of leader who led this group. He would not have walked out without advising and letting us know that this was going to happen ahead of time. So it brings suspicion on this, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable about things that are happening outside of this purview of this committee. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. I concur. I am puzzled and uncomfortable with the abruptness and the drama. And I'm not an investigator and I'm not trying to jump into the middle of it, but it's very discomforting then I think we should at least think about it. And I certainly wouldn't want it to happen again. But for me, it has an odor. And I don't like it. And it does diminish some of my enthusiasm for serving on this committee. That's not a threat that I'm leaving, but I'm saying some of my enthusiasm has been diminished.
Thank you. Understood. Is there anything else? Let's go and adjourn the meeting then. We have a motion to adjourn. We need a motion to adjourn, right? Okay, never mind. I thought we did. I thought we needed a motion for everything. Thank you.
Oh, neat, have you signed this?
No.